Nancy Turcich, and I'm going to read a little bit from my book, Finding My Way from Paralysis to a Rich Full Life. And we're going to talk a little bit about trauma and also healing, because the two go hand in hand, I hope, and not just one. And so with trauma, for me, there's some photos of trauma that I endured, and this is a body cast, and I also broke my arm. And in 1982, I fell off a cliff, and I broke my spine, and I crushed 3 vertebrae in the middle of my spine here, thoracic 4, 5, and 6, and I landed on a boulder. And so I went back to Southern Illinois is where I fell, and I went back there several times in order to kind of reenact, and I'll pass these photos around, but to really go back in time and kind of feel what I experienced there. Because what happened was I ended up being paralyzed, so I really left under someone else's power, and it was different to go back under my own power and really lay on a boulder, and that's what I'm reenacting in this photo, of laying on the boulder and really feeling what happened. Because as soon as I hit, my body kind of just swelled and I didn't feel anymore. And it really, the way I describe it in the book is, it felt like someone put a hose to my mouth and just turned on a faucet, and it like exploded. Everything just expanded inside. And then I couldn't feel anything from my chest down. And so when we talk about trauma, it comes in so many different forms. I mean, falling off a cliff is certainly a great trauma, very large and very heavy duty. And for me, the body cast was another trauma, because the way it was placed on my body, and came from the shoulders down to about the pubic bone in the front and into the back there. And with that, it really started to bind me, because they cast me, and then I started gaining weight. And guess what? Everything got pushed out, and so it really cut into my body a lot. So that was another trauma. So these photos you can take a look at, and these are some of my rescue. This is of Little Grand Canyon, which is the forest where I was when I fell. And again, being in Southern Illinois, it's the Shawnee National Forest. So that was the area where I was at, and I was at a place called Little Grand Canyon, which a lot of people now that I'm in Arizona are saying Grand Canyon. It was the Little Grand Canyon. But the cliffs out there are pretty large. Where I fell wasn't terribly high, but they said I fell probably about 35 or 40 feet. The thing was landing on a boulder, and that's what crushed my back. So I'd like to start with just reading from the newspaper. That was the college newspaper, and I finally tracked down the little blurb that was in there, and this was the Daily Egyptian, and this was Monday, October 18th, 1982. And the
How old were you at the time?
I was 19. I was just going to read that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No problem, no problem. So it's called SIUC, which is Southern Illinois and Carbondale. So SIU student falls from bluff. An SIU student is listed in critical condition after she fell off a bluff Saturday afternoon at Little Grand Canyon south of Murfreesboro. Nancy Turcich, 19, of Chicago, was carried 1.5 miles by friends and volunteers to a parking lot where she was transported by ambulance to St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital in Murfreesboro, according to Jackson County Sheriff's Department. The accident occurred when Miss Turcich slid down a waterfall or a stream and went off the end of a bluff, a spokesman said. 5 volunteers joined her friends to help the rescue. And so what happened was the rescue, the waiting really, became traumatic, terribly traumatic for my friends. And I went back with the gentleman who was behind me when I fell, and we were both just up on top of the cliffs enjoying sunshine because it was cold down below. And so we were just there, and we went up to the sun, and then they asked for horseshoes, and then that's when I came down, and I knew where I put the horseshoes, and I knew no one else did. So it was one of those, like, I'll be down in a second, and it was probably less than that. So it was the route that I chose, and you can see from the photos the top of the cliff. I did not take that picture. My friend went up to the top and took the photo from the top of the cliff. And so for me, when we were coming down, we didn't see the cliff end. It looked like it continued down to the bottom of the canyon, to the canyon floor where my friends were. And so it looked fairly simple. Certainly didn't know it was an old waterfall or a stream, but that was what happened. So to read a little bit of a reaction of one of my friends that was with me. So Dawn, my friend and roommate, couldn't talk about my fall for many years. She said, "It was the worst thing I ever witnessed. What more is there to say?" I continued to probe for answers for myself and hopefully to bring her peace. I'm not sure the latter will happen, but Dawn eventually shared a few important tidbits. As they watched me fall, everyone reacted individually. The guys all scattered, but Dawn froze. She said my insides were shaking and I was unable to do anything. Dawn and Dee Dee remained in the cave-like amphitheater on the canyon floor until they were stable enough to move, to climb. Then they managed to scurry through the rough terrain to get me and my punk attitude. Teary-eyed, Dawn spoke of hearing a scream and then watching me fall. She said there was definitely a scream, and then the sound of falling rocks. Gives me chills just to think about it. She defined the event as an image and sounds that she'll take to her grave. Something core deep, but difficult to describe. Dawn felt the group responded with an overall sense of denial. They told themselves that I'd be okay, and my injuries were bad, but nothing to warrant my imminent demise. From her perspective, that thought stayed with them until they were at St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital in Murfreesboro. There, Dawn spoke to my parents by phone. She told them that I was conscious, talkative, and behaving like my normal self. In her words, she was accentuating the positive. From a phone extension, she overheard the nurse tell my parents that they should get to St. Louis as soon as possible because they didn't know if I would make it through the night. Dawn's denial instantly clashed with reality and transformed into despair. This is a trauma for her, and so for her, the experience is quite different. I did the falling, she did the watching of me fall, heard the sounds and all that. Those are things I don't know. I don't know the scream, don't remember screaming. Through therapy, I've worked through a lot of the trauma in my spine, and working through that, I haven't ever really let out a big scream. Lots of grunts, lots of groans, lots of swearing. Lots of swearing. And again, that's just my release and how I do things. So everybody does things a bit different, and I think that trauma, again, it's how we hold the energy, and that's very different for everyone. So for me, that was the start. And 20-some years later, I'm still working with therapy in different ways.